Imagine this. It's the middle of a global pandemic. Schools are shut down, families are struggling, and the US government launches an emergency program. One single mission: make sure children don't go hungry. Billions of dollars, deployed fast, to feed kids. Now imagine someone looks at that program and sees a cash machine. That's exactly what federal prosecutors say Syed Abdullahi Ereg did, a grocery store owner in Minneapolis. A man who, according to the Department of Justice, claimed his small deli was feeding over 3,000 children, twice a day, every single day. That's 1.4 million meals, and almost every single one of them, allegedly, never happened. What followed was one of the most audacious frauds in recent American history. A fake empire built on phantom meals, foreign bank accounts, and a lavish lifestyle funded by money meant for hungry kids. And this week, the FBI and DOJ made sure he had nowhere left to run. Stay with me, because this story gets wilder with every single detail. To understand what Ereg allegedly pulled off, you need to understand the program he allegedly exploited. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government expanded the child nutrition program, a safety net designed to ensure low-income children who normally relied on school meals would still get fed, even with schools closed. The program was massive, and to get the money out fast, the government relied on nonprofits and community organizations to act as sponsors, entities that would oversee local vendors feeding kids in their neighborhoods. One of those nonprofits was a Minnesota-based organization called Feeding Our Future. At its peak, Feeding Our Future was funneling hundreds of millions of dollars to vendors across Minnesota. On paper, it looked like an incredible charitable operation. Thousands of families being served, millions of meals delivered. But investigators began to notice something deeply wrong. The numbers didn't add up. Sites were claiming to feed impossible numbers of children. Reimbursement requests were flying in for facilities that, in some cases, barely existed. The fraud, when it finally unraveled, would total over $250 million stolen from a program designed for the most vulnerable children in America. Said Abdullahi Ereg was right in the middle of it. If you're finding this story as jaw-dropping as I am, hit that like button right now. Okay, back to the story, because here's where it gets even more unbelievable. According to federal prosecutors, Ereg operated Evergreen Grocery and Deli, a small store in South Minneapolis. On paper, it was enrolled under Feeding Our Future as a meal distribution site for children in need. What Ereg allegedly did next was breathtakingly bold. He claimed his grocery and deli was serving over 3,000 meals, twice daily, 7 days a week. Do the math on that. A small grocery store in South Minneapolis, allegedly feeding more children per day than some school districts. Federal prosecutors say the meals largely didn't exist. Instead, court documents allege Ereg submitted fraudulent reimbursement claims and collected $4.2 million in federal payments, money that was supposed to nourish low-income children during a global health crisis. But he didn't just pocket it quietly. According to the DOJ, proceeds were laundered through foreign bank accounts. Some of those funds were allegedly used to finance what prosecutors describe as a lavish lifestyle, the kind of lifestyle that gets noticed. And while Ereg was allegedly living large, federal investigators were building their case. In 2024, a federal grand jury indicted Syed Abdullahi Ereg on charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. But by then, Ereg was gone. For 2 years, Syed Abdullahi Ereg remained a wanted man, federal charges hanging over him, investigators tracking his trail, the case moving forward without him. And then, everything changed on June 4, 2026. The FBI, working alongside the DOJ and the White House Task Force to eliminate fraud, announced something that had never existed before in American history: the Most Wanted Fraudsters List. Think about that. The FBI has had a Most Wanted list for decades: killers, terrorists, organized crime bosses. But this was the first time the United States government created a dedicated public list specifically targeting major fraud suspects. People accused of stealing from the American taxpayer on a massive scale. And right there, near the top of that inaugural list, was Syed Abdullahi Ereg. The message from the FBI and DOJ was unmistakable. There is no safe harbor for fraud. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been running. We are coming. What happened next shocked even the investigators. Hit subscribe so you never miss a case. Now, back to what happened the day after that list went public. June 5, 2026. One day after the FBI launched the Most Wanted Fraudsters List, Ereg's attorney reached out to federal authorities. His client, the lawyer said, wanted to come home. Within days, Syed Abdullahi Ereg was on a flight back to the United States. On June 10, 2026, less than a week after his name was plastered on the FBI's brand new Most Wanted Fraudsters List, he walked off a plane at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport and surrendered directly to waiting FBI agents. FBI Special Agent in Charge Chris Dotson stood before cameras at a Minneapolis press conference that afternoon and delivered a message that was part announcement, part warning. "There will be more arrests," Dotson said. "This is not the end." FBI Director Kash Patel didn't mince words either. He called it historic, the first ever arrest of a subject on the Most Wanted Fraudsters List. Patel said Ereg had allegedly stolen over $4 million from the federal child nutrition program during the COVID-19 pandemic, money meant for children. The DOJ made clear that Ereg's case didn't exist in isolation. His wife, Najmo Ahmed, who had worked at the Evergreen Grocery and Deli and received payments directly from Feeding Our Future, had already pleaded guilty to money laundering charges the previous year. Her sentencing is scheduled for later this month. Two members of the same household, the same fraudulent operation, both now facing federal justice. This case is about far more than one man and one deli in Minneapolis. The Feeding Our Future scandal is one of the largest fraud cases in Minnesota history and one of the most egregious pandemic-era fraud schemes in the entire country. Federal prosecutors have alleged that the total amount stolen from the child nutrition program through this network exceeded $250 million. Fraudsters allegedly bought mansions, luxury cars, funneled money abroad, and they did it all while claiming they were feeding the most vulnerable children in America during the most chaotic period in modern history. Ereg's arrest marks the first takedown from the new Most Wanted Fraudsters List, but federal officials have been explicit. The list was built to be used. The DOJ's newly created National Fraud Enforcement Division, standing alongside Vice President Vance's White House Task Force to Eliminate Fraud, has made clear that high-profile fraud fugitives will be hunted with the same urgency as violent criminals. The era of hiding behind shell companies and foreign accounts is over, they say. The FBI proved it in under a week, said Abdullahi Ereg is now in federal custody. He faces charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. If convicted on all counts, he is looking at the possibility of decades behind bars. But perhaps the most striking detail of this entire story isn't the $4.2 million. It isn't the phantom meals or the foreign accounts, or even the audacity of claiming to feed thousands of children a day out of a single grocery store. It's the speed, one public list, 6 days, and a fugitive who had been running for 2 years walked off a plane and gave himself up. That is the power of public accountability. That is what happens when the FBI and the DOJ decide that fraud isn't a white-collar inconvenience. It's a federal priority. And if the message being sent right now across every federal fugitive hiding from fraud charges is anything like the one Ereg received, there are going to be a lot more press conferences in the days ahead. This has been your Justice Served Breakdown. I'll see you in the next one.